Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, we have a great show for you today. We're going to start out with a journalist roundtable. We've got some interesting topics, and then something I've wanted to do for a long, long time, e-cigarettes, medical marijuana. We have a physician who's going to come on the program and talk a little bit about that. I can't wait for this interview. We'll be back after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Yeah. All right, I think I should have said for a while, but John Micek sitting here going to correct my grammar. I'm the host and a professor. What do you expect me to do?
You just said it's something you've been wanting to do for a while. I mean, if you're going to be doing, like, if you're going to be taking a hit from an electric cigarette or, you know, medical marijuana after we're done,
I get it.
I'm hanging around. That's all I'm saying.
I don't smoke. I never have. All right, John Micek from the
you vape?
No, I almost said from the Harrisburg Patriot News, PennLive. He's the editorial page editor, and Mary Wilson from PA Public Radio. Well, we started this show out great. All right, the legislature passes and the governor signs $2.4 billion road, bridges, mass transit expansion. John Micek, are they getting down to brass tacks here?
Well, we're sitting inside of there are no windows, but we know how bumpy the roads are, courtesy of potholes from this rough winter we've been having. And PennDOT announcing it's going to spend $220 million on winter road repairs. That's filling potholes, that's road salt, that's all that good stuff.
We need that.
Oh yeah, I'm not debating that at all. It's getting rough out there. There's this stuff they use. I learned all about this at a forum we did with some Harrisburg city officials.
Really?
This stuff they called cold patch, which sounds just fantastic, but it's only short-lived. And so they need to get out there and do like these actual long-term repairs because as the ground thaws, we're going to see more potholes. I learned a lot about this.
Yeah.
And they're going to.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they're going to get out there. And she's giving me a very quizzical look.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I gave up playing dodgeball. I'm now playing dodge the potholes on the roads. What's going on with this? Is this, how important is this? It's pretty important, isn't it, to get these?
Well, I mean, yeah, for an agency that spends something like $7 billion a year on its annual budget, I'm not, $220 million, that's significant because the budget for winter is $189 million. So they've gone over that now by about $11 million. They're set to go over again by another $20 million before the winter is done. So that's why it's significant. The other thing about that 189 budgeted figure for winter road maintenance is that it's based on past kind of mild winters. Okay. So it might have been higher if previous years weren't so mild. The problem here is that the winter was harsher than anybody expected. It's the number of freeze-thaw cycles is causing a lot of problems.
It's not over.
But the good thing is, so says the PennDOT secretary, is that he'll have more money to do longer-term repairs, not all that cold patch. Is that what you called it?
All right.
Because of transportation funding.
All right, John. Let's. Here we go. This governor's election, we've had a stunning surprise in the past couple of weeks. Tom Wolf has emerged as the front runner, not by just a little bit. It's early. Admittedly, there's still a lot of undecided voters. What's your take on that?
I mean, this is what 1,800 spots, according to my friends at the Morning Call, will get you in television advertising done by Saul Shore down there in Philadelphia, the famous Democratic media strategist. I mean, they've been on constantly these really well done biographical ads. Issue ads, one on school spending and shale drilling, how the state doesn't have a severance tax. And, we've seen Mr. Wolf go in one poll from third place to first place. I mean, he finished third in the Democratic State Committee meeting a couple of weeks ago. Rob McCord, the state treasurer, coming out first. But as you point out, Terry, it's very early days yet.
Yeah. It's still, go ahead.
I mean, and is it stunning? Is it really stunning that the guy who gave $10 million to his own campaign...
You mean 1,800 commercials in 4 markets from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, and I think he spent $1.5 million. Again, the Allentown Morning Call piece was, laid that out.
Right. I mean, I have a hard time even being, even remotely, I am shocked that Tom Wolf has leapt ahead in the polls because... This is what money does.
And the problem, though, is once you become the first place guy, everybody else is going to use you for target practice. And we've already seen Rob McCord getting the claws out a little bit, saying he's trying to auction off the race. And we were wondering how long it was going to take before it all went from like campfire sing-along to nasty, and now we're there.
Yeah. And I used to, have a saying, the leader always gets pulled back. That's the point Mary was making. The leader always gets pulled back into the pack. You can't let the front runners stay out there, so they all have to decide how they're going to handle it. and it still has, some time to go. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, there's been some very interesting national news in the past couple of weeks about Jan Brewer in Arizona on vetoing some anti-gay rights legislation. Actually, to put it another way, some legislation that particularly the gay community and others would have considered very discriminatory. I think I'm getting that right. Pennsylvania has a bill, and there's a lawmaker that has a bill that's very controversial. We're going to talk about that when we return.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation, educating citizens and business leaders about important public policy issues and civic affairs. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by BetterSaferRoads.com. To voice your support for safer highways and less traffic congestion, visit BetterSaferRoads.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
A little journalist update with John Micek and Mary Wilson going on here on Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Before we leave the topic, John, there's a couple of other points that I think ought to be made about the governor's race.
Yeah, I mean, we were chatting over the break over this. I mean, Mr. Wolf is still out front, but it's still 2/3 to 7 and 10 who still have no idea who any of these candidates are. How many people are going to still support him later on? So you see him, you know him, he's familiar, right. But how strong is that actual support within the Democratic primary
so the race
base?
Is still fluid, Mary. You've been covering this. I mean, it's hard yet to get a real sense. They agree on 90% of the issues, so what's going to make a difference, right?
Well, yeah, I think all these kind of whisperings in the background about what individual candidates' weaknesses are, I think in the next couple months, those are going to start not being whispered. Those are going to be the things that are public questions at forums, and maybe they're going to make their way into certainly campaign blast emails to press and supporters. And then after that, they're going to make their way into quotes in articles.
All right, John Micek, in polls that I've done and others have done, Pennsylvanians now support gay marriage. It's up over 50%. Mm-hmm. There's still some consideration of some other aspects of discrimination. The governor now supports a bill that would ban discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation in employment and housing. But there's some other aspects of this. Just wanted to give that perspective. Take it.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this before we ran to commercial. Just the other week, Arizona Governor Jan Brewer vetoed that bill that would have allowed businesses to refuse accommodation and service to gays were the primary example, but really to anybody based on a sincere religious belief. That's sort of like the term of art that was in the bill, sincerely held belief.
Right.
She came out and vetoed that amid huge mounting business pressure. The NFL was threatening to yank the Super Bowl. A state lawmaker here in Pennsylvania, Representative Gordon Denlinger, a Republican from Lancaster County, who's retiring at the end of the year, is circulating what's known as a co-sponsorship memo. He's looking for support for a similar proposal. What's critical to note is that he hasn't introduced the bill yet. And Denlinger has said he will not until he's convinced. He's handed over to con law experts and won't introduce it until it clears that barrier.
Similar? Is that the whole point?
It's pretty well identical.
It's got a sincerely held belief
held belief language in it. It's pretty identical.
But how do you determine sincerely held belief?
I think
is that a legal nightmare?
I think it's a prick on the finger. I think it's just like an insulin. No, I'm joking.
No, but I get it. I mean,
if it comes out blue, it's sincerely held. If it comes out red, it's not.
Yeah, I think Denlinger, by the way, was seeking a Senate seat, right?
He got denied the Republican nomination down there in the 36th district, Mike Brubaker's seat. But last we checked, he was still thinking about running.
Yeah. So I mean, Mary, you're in the Hill all the time. I mean, does this seem likely in an election year, especially with the Senate, the Senate is more moderate, I think you would agree, than the House? You both agree with that? Is that something likely to be taken up?
Right. I agree with the general thrust of your question. I also think that in a district, I'm not that familiar with that new Senate district that he'll be running for.
Yeah.
But if it's if it's like a lot of other districts that were created during the latest redistricting, it might skew a little bit more Republican. And the other thing we've noticed is that more conservative members are making their way or skipping up to the Senate.
I get your point. So
maybe it's not such a third rail type of issue.
Look, great update. Thanks for coming. Look, I've wanted to do this e-cigarette business. I don't know very much about it. Dr. Karen Rizzo, she's the president-elect of the Medical Society, Pennsylvania Medical Society, is coming on. We're going to talk about that and some aspects of medical marijuana. The folks in this state overwhelmingly support it. It's not without its controversies also, but this is a couple segments you will not want to miss.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Well, as I said before, this is a program I wanted to do for a long time. Dr. Karen Rizzo, she's the president-elect of the Pennsylvania Medical Society, is sitting across from me. We're going to have a little chat about this. E-cigarettes, I didn't have any clue what they were 5 years ago. I don't know if we even had them. They call something called vaping, and it emits a vapor. There's virtually no regulations about it. I don't know how much studies have gone on. I haven't seen a lot. Dr. Rizzo, let's talk about e-cigarettes from the medical point of view.
Well, the concern from our perspective is that an e-cigarette still has nicotine. And it seems that marketing now is being targeted to adolescents and teenagers. So many companies that are doing this are even flavoring it with cotton candy, bubble gum, gummy bears. And
I didn't know that.
The concern is that adolescents and teenagers are trying it, and many are liking it. So the concern is also that this may be a bridge to them developing smoking habits, which will only, lead to, worse health problems down the road. So at this point in time, there is no regulation. There's no ban on marketing or selling to anyone under 18. So this is one place where...
So at a minimum, would you argue we've got to say under 18, it's a no-no?
Absolutely.
Yeah, at a minimum.
At a minimum.
We could decide
That's a starting point.
Okay, good point. One of the other things, what I don't get is the lack of, there are no federal and state laws. Some restaurants say, no, you can't have it inside. I thought I read where New York City banned it, no e-cigarettes in restaurants at all. I guess they did that by municipal ordinance. But do we need more studies? Is this something that we just absolutely have to know more about, and the long-term medical effects of this?
Well, absolutely, because again, it's still nicotine. It's still a nicotine product. Nicotine affects the heart, the lungs, can impact, your cardiovascular status. So it's not something to be forgotten about, and it's a real impact, and there's also an addictive component to it.
Right. See, that's a concern, and I think we ought to have. Here's the point. We're all cautioning people about cigarettes. I guess this is supposed to be the safer substitute. I'll put that in quotes. And we don't know yet whether it is indeed the safer substitute. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Now, in people who are trying to stop smoking, it may be a bridge to helping that.
I get it.
But in young people who are just learning about all this and trying different things, it could also be a bridge to something more deleterious to their health.
Does the Medical Society, do you have a position on this yet?
At this
still
point,
considering it?
Well, we want more research to be done, but we support banning the selling to minors. And we'd really like it to be handled like other tobacco products and regulate it.
Yeah, just on the surface, that would seem, without getting into the technical side of it, before we know, and I often don't express a point of view about this, but on this I will. The prudent thing is to do this. until we find out, isn't it? Rather than risk the health of young people.
Absolutely. Patient safety, is always the most important component.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about medical marijuana legalization. It's popular. The voters say they like it. 20 states have laws that permit it in various forms. 2 states permit recreational marijuana. There's all sorts of implications to this. Dr. Rizzo will weigh in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Welcome back to the program with Dr. Karen Rizzo. She's the incoming president-elect of Pennsylvania Medical Society. We're going to talk about medical marijuana. Doctor, to be candid with you, the medical community is split on this. I've seen doctors who say, I have patients with certain kinds of maladies. They need it for relief. There's been testimony before the legislature and Congress about folks with serious illnesses that this works, whereas other kinds of medications don't. So let's just start going through this. What do you, from a medical point of view, what do you think are the pros and the cons to the use of medical marijuana?
Well, I think from the information that we currently have, a lot of which is anecdotal, right. More research needs to be done in a scientific way to determine the best use of the product, because we're seeing that there is benefit in certain circumstances. But what is the optimum dose? What is the optimum route? Should it be a pill, a liquid? Should you smoke it? Mm-hmm. Is there a lethal dose? Okay, are there long-term side effects that we need to know about? These are all important questions that we don't have answers for yet. And the other concern is that it's still a Schedule I drug, meaning that it's basically defined as having no medical or therapeutic value. Mm-hmm. So as a result of that, research can't be done on it because it's not legal or able to be performed. So part of what the Pennsylvania Medical Society is advocating for is to get that changed to a Schedule II drug through the FDA.
What's that mean?
Well, it loosens the restrictions on utilizing it for research, so that double-blind studies can be done that are randomized, placebo-controlled, so you get valid information about its usefulness, the best way, the dosing, the route, and things like that that can help determine exactly, the right way to use it.
Yeah. I might point out that there is legislation introduced into the state Senate supported by, not arguably a pretty liberal state senator and a conservative Republican state senator from the Susquehanna Valley, Senator Fulmer. So it does have bipartisan support in that sense. I don't know exactly where it will go in the legislature. We'll have to see. All right. Well, let's go through some of the aspects of it. I mean, the point that often is made is that pot today is not the same pot it was 20 or 30 years ago. It's much stronger. It contains all sorts of other ingredients. Would that be some of the concerns that you think ought to get ferreted out when we decide, if we decide, 20 states already have it, so it's not like it's not being used, right?
20 states have it, and the District of Columbia.
Right.
The one closest to us is New Jersey, okay? Back in the 60s, marijuana was about 1 to 2% in potency with THC.
Right.
Now they're saying that's about 10 to 12%. So that's a significant increase in potency. Yeah. So what does that mean? How does that impact people who use it? We don't know. That's part of the concern. From our perspective, it's all about safety. Above all else, do no harm. So I think we need to gather information about this. Mm-hmm. Now, there are certain specialties that are advocating its use right now. Oncologists like to use it for control of nausea and to stimulate appetite in people on chemotherapy. Neurologists like using it for seizure control.
Epilepsy, would that be?
Right,
Yeah,
epilepsy
I read that,
and post-traumatic stress disorder. Ophthalmologists like using it for glaucoma control, chronic pain and muscle spasm. Patients with multiple sclerosis, it's being utilized to help them lead a more comfortable life. So there's benefits to it. But again, the question is, what's the safety protocol? What's the best way to utilize it? And that's what we don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that, like anything else, we need to set up, first of all, we need to understand its implications, medical implications. That's the point you made. And for young folks, developmental, because there's some concern there, I guess, depending on the nature of your disease, if you suffer from a disease that's life-threatening, meaning you've got a certain amount of time, it probably matters less than someone who has something that,
right.
you know, I think you would agree as a physician. So would your argument be that what we need to do is to get a set of rules and regulations that everybody follows so we don't have all this limbo? You don't want your members being put in legal jeopardy even though they're trying to help their patient.
Correct. And the avenue to do that is to get it changed to the Schedule II drug and then to get the research in place, get the questions answered, and go from there.
Yeah. I guess that's because it was considered, you know, illegal. Nobody was doing the kind of research that was necessary on something we were telling people not to use, right?
Correct.
So you didn't have the medical community wasn't as invested in getting something done. The other implication, and I don't know, it's not so much a medical one, but you know, if you go the medical marijuana route, there are concerns that you're virtually legalizing it. You know what I mean? Depending, you know, in some states, individuals can grow it in their home, work through a provider, and get up to one state has you can serve 5 people who are ill, providing I mean, all of a sudden it gets pretty loose, and you could have a much more expansion of it than we might believe, which could lead to medical problems for folks like you when you treat them, right?
Correct. I mean, there is an addiction potential with it. Most studies suggest 9 to 10%.
Yeah.
There is an impact on cognition long term, and that seems to be more pronounced with young people.
That's a great point.
You know, motor vehicle accidents. There was a study in Europe that showed the cognitive impairment from pot versus alcohol was less and led to less car accidents versus alcohol.
Right.
But still, neither of those situations are optimum. You know, what is the highest dose that someone should have in their system and operate a car?
That's where
who knows? We don't know that yet.
Yeah, we're almost out of time, but that's one thing. If we had these studies, that's the kind of thing we could learn, and then physicians like you, when you're dealing with patients, would be able to handle. Well, look, this has been a wonderful update. I want you to come back as these things move along and we can discuss this more. Thanks for coming in. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.